Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Confident Hypnotherapist. Now, this week I have one of New Zealand's best hypnotherapists to talk to, Faye Lawand. Faye, how are you doing today?
So good. Lawrence, it's so nice to be with you. Always great to chat.
Now, when I was looking at your bio, there are so many wonderful things that you mention in it, but internal conflict resolution expert, stress elimination specialist, relaxation coach, international speaker, world-class trainer, global citizen, I think it was 13 countries and 4 languages, I think, and founder of the 7R formula for rapid transformation. Clearly, you're a lady with a lot of experience.
But aren't we all? I mean, all of us who come into this type of work have a lot of life experience behind us that drives us to do the work that we do, right? I mean, I don't think any of us, when we were 6 or 7 and we were going around in classrooms telling people what we want to be when we grow up. I mean, I know I never, ever, ever told my teacher I want to be a hypnotherapist, a stress elimination specialist, and an internal conflict resolution expert. I mean, did you say that to your teacher?
Well, what did you think you were going to be when you were younger? What did you say?
I never knew, but I knew I always wanted to be happy, and I always knew I wanted to live a fabulous life. I just didn't know how. And I think a big part of being so confused about my career path is because there was a lot of internal confusion and internal conflict. You know, and we know from the work that we do, when there's so much internal strife, it's really difficult to have any clarity. Because literally you're working from a different part of your nervous system and a different part of your brain when you're in clarity mode versus when you're in conflict mode. So when we clear up the internal conflicts and the internal strife from the nervous system and the subconscious mind, then the natural resources of clarity, they just rise to the surface. And we totally know about what we need to do next.
For you personally, I know that you mentioned within your bio that you went through quite a few challenges over the course of the years. What was it that brought you to hypnotherapy initially, in terms of, was it a personal experience for you? How did you come to discover hypnotherapy?
Yeah, so it was in my late 30s. My life really started to crumble around me, and I had really I had multiple health issues, chronic health issues, mental health conditions. And so, I had insomnia, PTSD, undiagnosed depression, undiagnosed anxiety. I had all sorts of digestive issues. My self-esteem was at an all-time low. Things were really, really bad. Work was a struggle. Life was a struggle. Love was a struggle. Life was a struggle. I even had thoughts about ending it all, even though I didn't act on them. And then one morning on my way to work, at the time I was working as a teacher, and like when you're working as a school teacher, punctuality is very important. You can't just roll in whenever you want to roll in. But one morning on the way to work, I totally lost control of the car. I had a blackout in the car, lost control of the car. The car went spinning and it ended up on the other side of the road, and I had completely lost consciousness. And then when I came to, Lawrence, I had no idea what had happened, like none, but I was petrified. Like, how do you explain what happened? How do you explain it? I couldn't explain that to myself, let alone explain it to my boss. And so, because imagine, you turn up to school and you tell your boss, what had happened. That's worse than telling your boss or a teacher that the dog ate your homework. So, I just sucked it in. I got into trouble. And I didn't share this with anyone, but internally there was so much fear. Eventually, then I had more blackout episodes. So I would be working out and I'd pass out. I would be sitting at my desk and I'd pass out. After the 3rd blackout episode, I thought, I really need to look into this. Now, when I started doing the rounds with the doctors, I really was convinced that I had a medical condition, and I actually thought it was neurological and some kind of brain structural issue. And that's really what I was hoping for. I was actually hoping for a medical diagnosis, that would explain what was going on for me then to move on with my life. Well, that didn't happen. So I did the rounds with the doctors, and Test after test after test came back negative. And then after the third or the fourth doctor's visit, I remember sitting in a doctor's office and he said, I have such good news for you, Faye. All your tests are negative. There's nothing wrong with you. I started crying. I'm like, but doctor, if there's nothing wrong with me, why am I feeling so bad?
Yeah.
Why am I feeling so bad? And that started, the question around what does it take to really be well and okay? Now, eventually my symptoms got diagnosed as PTSD and depression, which I resisted at the time because I had this fallacy. I was living under this fallacy, that you can only be depressed if you're a negative person and you need to have a big trauma happen to you in order to develop PTSD. But of course, now that I know what I know that that's not the case. But when I eventually considered that potentially my psychological and emotional health could be impacting what was happening in my body, I was open to the suggestions moving forward. And the suggestions moving forward at the time were prescription drugs and talk therapy. So right away, I said no to the prescription drugs. But I thought, let me go to the talk therapy because, there is it felt possible that my internal landscape was behind my physical conditions. I went to 2 talk therapy sessions and I never returned because, Lawrence, I would feel worse after each session than when I walked in, going round and round and round and talking about how every area of my life wasn't working and how bad that made me feel. And that started my quest. That was 15 years ago. Mm. I started a quest into what does it take to be well, happy, and resilient in a way that is natural, easy, effective, no side effects and works. And it was very much a trial. It was trial and error. It was experimentation, right? Because at the time, I had no idea about the mind-body connection. There was actually no tools or systems or guides or therapies or coaches around me. I just started studying for myself. Hypnotherapy came into my radar only about 5 years after I started my quest. So it was a little bit later on. But when I heard about the subconscious mind and how it's the storehouse of everything that's ever happened to you and how it holds the keys to the compelling future that you desire, I thought, oh my God, I really want to go do this. So I booked in for a session. And the therapist at the time, she did what we now do for our clients. So she instructed my subconscious mind to go back to the very first time that was behind all the chronic issues and limitations in my current life. And of course, the subconscious mind, being so compliant, totally followed her instructions. Now, just as a little backstory, which I didn't mention at the start of our conversation, I was born in Lebanon in the Middle East. And I was born in Lebanon right before the start of the Lebanese Civil War in 1975. And that war, as you may know or recall or remember, it spanned about 17 years and it claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people and it displaced many millions of others. And my family and I were in that statistic who fled the war pretty early on in the piece. And so I always grew up with the narrative and the story that nothing traumatic has ever happened to us because we escaped the war pretty early on in the piece. Now, obviously, my subconscious mind had a very, very different reality and a very different recollection of events. Because that day in that hypnotherapist's chair, my mind went back to the time when I was about 4.5 and we were fleeing the war zone. And my father had been caught outside the country because he had been kidnapped so many times leading up to our escape. The airports were closing and opening, and it was a really dire situation. Some way, somehow, my mother got she got the message that the best time to flee is around 2 a.m. So that's what happened. We fled at around 2 a.m. and on the way to the airport, the sniper started, going overhead and there was bombs in the distance. And, my mother, she was fleeing a war zone, leaving her country behind, leaving her family behind, leaving everything she had ever known behind with 3 young children. I was the eldest. I was 4.5. My younger brother was like 3, and my little sister was like 1.5 years. You can imagine what sort of situation she was in and what her nervous system was like. And so in an attempt to protect us kids, she shoved all of our heads underneath the seats of the car. Now, I suffocated. I couldn't breathe. I could not breathe, and the nervous system went into total freeze mode. And now that we know what we know about the nervous system, like when that fight flight response kicks in, when there's a perception that your life is in danger and that's not unwound and reset, it becomes stuck inside your nervous system and it ends up creating imbalances. And in my case, those imbalances showed up the way that they had with, all those chronic health conditions, plus, the negative, the low mood and the lack of clarity and the negative emotions, and you name it. Now that's what happened. So, that's the scene that the mind came up with in the hypnotherapy session. But Lawrence, when I came out of that session, I was convinced that this was utter bullshit. I was absolutely convinced it was utter bullshit. I actually left that office and I called my friend and I said, this is the biggest load of BS. How could something that happened to me when I was 5 have anything to do? How can it impact my life when I'm 41, 36 years later? How is that even possible? And so I never went back for a session until about six months down the road, and obviously, that is so much has changed since. And of course, how could something like that not have any type of impression or impact on your life moving forward? And so, from then, I went back and did a lot more hypnotherapy, and everything in my life cleared and came right. All the blockages, all the self-limitations, all the health situations, they all cleared in that way that I was looking for, naturally, no side effects, safely, effectively. Now, it could have been a lot faster had I known about it and had I not stood in my own way. And now that's my passion, to bring this as a solution to other professionals who are struggling with chronic conditions that can be quickly reset by working with the subconscious resources and tools and the nervous system.
That's an incredible, geez, there's so many, you almost feel like we need to make a Hollywood blockbuster film out of your life with all that going on. That's and it's interesting how your initial experience of hypnotherapy was almost to say hypnophony. Wow, that could be a Freudian slip, but totally accurate, that you felt that there was that critique going on there. When did you realize that the work you were doing actually was working for you, that there actually was changes going on at that unconscious level?
It took a while, because I didn't, I guess because there was so much skepticism, right? And there was so much cynicism, and I wasn't surrounded with the right people, to hear the right messages. I know that I missed a lot of positive changes that could have been pointed out had someone actually guided me to point them out and talk to me about the negativity bias and why it's because of the negativity bias that I'm missing things. Right now in the work that I do with my clients, Lawrence, one of the first things that we talk about and I educate them about is the negativity bias and how it's the negativity bias actually that can keep them from seeing the changes because their mind has been so habituated to look for the negative that they miss it.
It reminds me of the think thinks and the prove approves.
What was that?
It's Robert Anton Wilson, and it's all about this. Have a Google of it, but you find it interesting. It's all about this whole notion that the thinker thinks, which is the conscious mind, and the prover proves, which is the unconscious mind. So whatever you're focusing
Yes,
on, then the unconscious will prove that to be the reality. So if you have
totally.
negative biasness, then that kind of reality is what you're going to get. It comes back to that perception is reality concept.
Totally.
Mm.
Totally. And to answer your question, when did I realize? So about 6 months after my first session, things actually started to escalate very badly in my life. Eventually, I manifested precancerous cells. And that was my biggest wake up call. And that's when I realized something drastic has to change, right? And I have to get really serious about getting well really, really quickly. And so, I was in academia at the time, and so I took a sabbatical. And I did what most middle-aged women do who are single. I went to India for the year, and I studied yoga and yoga therapy and meditation. And then, towards the end of my stay, I went and studied clinical hypnotherapy, but spiritual clinical hypnotherapy. And obviously, when I came back from my sabbatical, when I went to get tested, the precancerous cells had disappeared. Everything had come right in my physical body, like everything. My digestion had come right. Everything had come right. Of course, it had come right. Because there was balance again between all levels of the mind. And, and then all the other limitations in my life around career purpose, relationships, health, they all came right. And that's when I knew that it was definitely the subconscious mind and the nervous system, because I feel you cannot separate the subconscious mind from the nervous system.
No, absolutely not. In fact, I was talking to someone the other day about how, I used to talk about a mind-body connection, but now I'm recognizing that it's actually your conscious mind, your unconscious mind, your spiritual body, and your physical body. Actually, spiritual bodies is probably a better phrase than anything. And I think that was, for me, such a missing piece of what I was doing until about a year ago, when something happened and my understanding about spirituality shifted. As anyone who's watched the last few of these episodes has probably recognized conversations there. I know that you spent many years training and spent a lot of money to train as well. Were there any particular people that you felt were big influences on you when you started out?
Yeah. Okay. So I did my first training, as I mentioned, in India. So that was 2012. I did my first training. And even though I experienced firsthand the profound difference that hypnotherapy can have, I was certified. I actually could have gone out and started working with clients. I didn't. I was so petrified to do it. I actually didn't start seeing clients and charging clients until 2018, I think it was. I think it was 2018. So that's not that long ago. And the person who had the biggest influence, there were actually three people that were really influential. One was Helen Mitas. Studying with Helen Mitas provided me with the structure to get started, because, I was so overwhelmed with all the different directions that I could potentially go in with clients, but I didn't know how to get started. So that system was so amazing to get me started and give me the confidence, to move forward.
I agree. I think when you have a structure around what you're doing, then it allows you to be able to, in some ways, I feel like it's that reinforcement, that support that's needed, so you can bring your focus to actually what's in front of you, knowing where the direction is going, as opposed to wondering what's going to happen session to session.
Yes, and to have a system from someone who's done it so many times before, that it's a system that works, that it's not trial and error. The second person that was really influential in my journey to get over myself was Joanna Cameron. And when I did my training with Joanna Cameron, I was one of her demos. And she used her protocol and her technique to drain the limiting belief around I'm not a good hypnotherapist from my body mind, and I literally felt it leaving my body. I literally felt it leaving my body, and about 2 months later, I started charging for charging. And then the third person who had a different, I think it was a person, it was a Tad James company, because I did my training with the Tad James company, and those tools were massively life-changing, and the confidence that I got from that was incredible. And then since then, there really has been, now when I think back to that person who was so petrified, to serve clients, I don't even recognize her,
If you could go back in time then and speak to her, what advice would you give to that earlier version of Faye?
Like, I would say there's really nothing to fear. I would actually say trust your intention and your instincts, because right now, of course, I've got tools, and of course I've got an understanding, of course, like that's there. But really, it's that intuition that I never doubt and I never second guess. And I have a clear intention every single time I walk into a session, and a clear intention for healing for the other person. And it serves my clinic well and my hypnotherapy business well. And that is what I would tell her. But how do you, it's that cynical mind, Lawrence, that cynical mind would not have paid attention to that back then.
I know you've been able to push through that cynical mind in recent years. You've become a presenter, a trainer. I know you're involved with Freddie Jacqueline last year to do online presentations as well. And of course, you're running now online courses, retreats, all manner of things to help so many people. How did that all shift? Where did that kind of internal awareness of your own power kind of change for you?
I really think that it changed by resolving my internal conflicts, getting rid of the blockages that I have and that I was carrying, that really had no place being there. Getting rid of the limitations and the just that baggage that had no place being here. And I finally, when I did that. And it's a process, Lawrence, because I don't think that ever ends. I think that, right now my business, my hypnotherapy business, is the platform within which I get a reflection of all the stuff on the inside that I need to work through, but I know that when the big breakthroughs happened in releasing the stuff from the inside, the breakthroughs started happening in my business, in my hypnotherapy practice, but also in my business, because, now I have a hypnotherapy business. I'm fully self-employed. And so that's also a very different mindset. There's another different skill set and another different identity there that you have to work through and work around, right? And my goodness, when I went from charging people for hypnotherapy and I was still employed, and then wanting to make the leap into setting up my own business, you can only imagine the amount of bullshit that was there that I had to clear.
I don't know if you experience this as well. I find that as you get busier as well, you still sometimes hit that wall where you think, I'm seeing so many people, am I going to be able to help them? Or that kind of, do you find that a different kind of self-doubt, for want of a better term, creeps in?
Yes. Yeah. See, the thing is, I got really clear because I've suffered 3 burnouts in the past. I made a very clear pact with myself when I started doing this work that I will never, ever go there again. And because now I've developed such a good relationship with my body and with my nervous system, I can pick up when the body is going in a direction that is not helpful. And so I'm quite selective about how I utilize my energy, my resources, how many clients I see, how much I do, because the last thing I want to do is burn out by helping people recover from burnout.
That would be ironic, wouldn't it? I completely get it. I think I was mentioning to you earlier that I've been so busy the last few months that lately it's like, I need to up my self-care.
Yeah.
I need to make sure that I am putting myself first, because if I don't, I'm also
Yes,
not putting other
Lawrence.
people first. I'm also,
Yeah.
and so with that, what kind of, or do you have a self-care ritual that you do? What is it that you do that helps
Yeah.
keep you grounded, rested, creative,
Yeah.
active?
Yeah, it's actually my self-care protocol is quite non-negotiable in my life. So it starts off with my nervous system, like that comes first. And so daily, I observe digital mindfulness, right? So at a certain time, that phone gets switched off and it doesn't get switched back on. So as an example, I wish I can say that I get to bed at 10:30 every night, but I don't. So let's say in an ideal world, I get to bed at 10:30. By like 10:15, that phone is off.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I get up about 6:37. That phone remains off until after I've woken up and done my morning meditation, had my shower, gotten dressed, fixed my breakfast, and then I switch it on.
Yeah.
So we're looking at kind of intermittent digital fasting. And that is a non-negotiable practice for me. The days that I slip or the days that I can't do that for whatever reason, I definitely notice it within myself. So that, because see, the thing what happens with overconsumption of technology, Lawrence, is it externalizes us. When we're externalized, we're on someone else's agenda. When we're externalized, especially like with digital technology, social media or emails or even the news, the first thing that's coming into your mind during that hypnagogic state is someone else's agenda, someone else's thoughts, someone else's beliefs, someone else's emotions, someone else's beliefs. And that's what you're consuming instead of tapping into yourself. What do you want from the day? How do you want to feel? What do you want to accomplish today? Or maybe you seeding that time, using that time to prime your brain and seed your brain with what you want. Because, I mean, we know as hypnotherapists, we have direct access to our subconscious mind twice a day, at least twice a day. And so I'm very disciplined about how I use that window, that hypnagogic time, so that it's supporting me and supporting my aspirations and my life goals and not supporting someone else's agenda. That's non-negotiable, absolutely non-negotiable. And then, of course, on a daily basis, I move my body because it's so important to remove the tensions from your physical body, right? It's so important, so important. And so that could be something like a gentle walk or a yoga practice. My yoga practice is so sacred to me. I'm also a certified yoga teacher. And of course, I have a meditation practice. And my meditation practice is very simple. It's actually a really simple practice where I just check in with how my body feels, with how I'm breathing, with how I'm feeling, with what I'm thinking, and what I want. And it's just, being with what's there and whatever comes up from the body, from the breath, from the emotions, and from the mind. And that's pretty much it. That's kind of like my daily self-care ritual. And so far, so good.
I have to say, I've started in recent times self-swanning.
Oh.
Fascinating. And in fact, on Monday, I got up and I was feeling really tired. And I asked my swan if it would allow me to, I think the phrase I used was to build confidence for the day. My swan said no. And I did, what do you mean no? Kind of response, thinking, hang on, I'm the conscious mind here. Hang on, what do you mean no? And I went inwards for a moment. And then after a moment, I went, oh, can you allow to build my ability to be present with my clients today? I said yes.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, so my unconscious mind in that moment was being very particular with me, my conscious mind, about the word being used, the phrasing being used. Even though I consciously thought I wanted confidence, what I actually wanted was
presence. And it always knows.
Fascinating experience. So for me lately, part of my, and I have a very dear friend, Joe Buzzardall, who is a very strong believer in, before doing anything, make sure you, visualize protective force around you and bring in that positive affirmation, and even just for a few minutes to do that, so that you don't carry any negativity with you. And I think between that and my swan, all I need to do now is get another 24 hours in a day, and I'll be sorted.
Let us know when you have the formula of how to do that. Patent it, though. Make sure to patent it, Lawrence.
Yeah, right. Who knows? Who knows? Obviously, a lot of people that listen to this podcast are people who may be just starting out as hypnotherapists or even hypnotists. What advice would you give them in terms of starting their career?
I like Helen. I think, one of the reasons why I was drawn to Helen is because I'm drawn to her mission, and I definitely believe this is the profession of the future. 100%, I believe that to be true. And so what I would tell them is that they are joining a career that is going to be profoundly important moving forward in a post-COVID world. I would say to clear their stuff, because as they clear their stuff, they're going to be able to be present in the work. And I think that's really, really important. And I would also say, to do training that will empower you to work with all levels of the mind. The subconscious is great, very important. But as we know, from Swan and I know from Simpson Protocol, there's a superconscious mind. We also know from the work of Dr. Stephen Porges, there's the nervous level, really educate yourself about all the levels of the mind.
I love that you're bringing up polyvagal theory there. And of course, the wonderful work that Ines Simpson does with her Simpson Protocol as well. I agree. Absolutely agree with you there.
Because I really think, the quantum mind, the subconscious mind, the nervous system together, when we bring them together, the work is so profound. And this is now what I do in my clinic, in my powerful trauma release protocol. It is a blending together of the minds, and the work is instantaneous. It's long lasting. And it's been fail-proof, Lawrence. It's been fail-proof. There is not a single client that comes through my powerful trauma release protocol that doesn't get the results that they want if their intention is clear, which, I usually vet for that. So I think it's really, really important to add to your toolbox and your resources trainings with the different levels of mind. Really important.
I absolutely agree. I think training is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because we do run the risk of perhaps training for the sake of training. And, I think there's,
Look behind me.
I've got folders full of trainings I've not even watched yet. I feel like I need a whole year just to sit down and to work through them. So I think it's about also, continuing that professional developer, but making sure that you are really allowing yourself to be present and invested in that training.
And to apply and integrate what you learn.
Yeah.
Which is really important. And, you and I are big fans of our mentor, Clive Girdham. And, one of the things that I 100% would encourage people to do is to do what Clive recommends, which is get on with it, actually go out and do it and take action, because it's true. We do know we are one step ahead of our client. And right now there are so many resources available to us, if there's something that comes up in a session that you're not very clear about, we all belong to so many networks and groups that it's very easy to get answers to things,
No, it's interesting though, because I think, and this is something, so I did training recently with a very dear friend of mine here in Melbourne, Paul Michel. And what I loved about Paul's training was that it was almost, I described it to him as like the matrix of hypnosis trainings, because I thought I knew what hypnosis was, but he almost had this red pill, blue pill thing happening where we took a different pill, we went down a rabbit hole, and I began to see hypnosis in a very different light. And I think sometimes when you go into these forums, sometimes there could be questions where people are going to project their understanding of things or what works for them in a way as though it is the only way.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it's important to be subjective around any of the forums that we might post in to understand that, that way might be a way, that works for them. But to come back to Helen Midas and her belief, there are absolutely no absolutes.
Yes.
Except for the proof that there is absolutely no absolutes. I think that that's important, because there can be so much debate that happens within, hypnotherapy forums about what approaches and
But you won't know as a hypnotherapist which approach is right until you go out and try it, right?
yeah, unless you actually try it
This is why it's so important to take action, And the thing is, this is so true. So someone said that, and it could have been Joanna Cameron or it could have been Helen. Someone said to me early on, when I was so stuck and so afraid to move forward, the client's eyes are closed. They have no idea what you're supposed to be saying next. They have no idea. And as long as they have an intention for healing and change, and you have an intention for healing and change, you really can't go wrong. And so now from Ines Simpson, one of the things that I incorporated every single session in order to screen or to affirm intention is to ask those questions. Are you willing to allow the mind to take you into hypnosis? Are you willing to allow the mind to release the subconsciously? Are you willing to allow the mind to take you as deep as you need to go? And I think that's really, really important, because then you have the client affirm the intention and you're affirming the intention as well with their eyes closed. And a technique doesn't really matter if you get it wrong.
I think also that there is, for a lot of people, and I've been guilty of this for many years, believing that what we are doing we are co-creating hypnosis.
Yeah.
It's a do with, not a do to. But I think also that when there's been times where clients haven't, for want of a better word, gone into hypnosis or have had a hypnotic experience in the way that we notice the phenomena, that we make that about us.
Yeah.
And that we kind of go, maybe there is an education there about how do we get that person, whether through the pre-talk or through that kind of initial stage, to be able to be more open to owning their experience and to the onus on them to have that experience, to create their experience, versus, that whole kind of, it must be something I'm doing wrong. And I think that's what stops hypnotherapists from trying different things, because there's this fear of a pass fail with some hypnotic phenomena.
And we kind of make it about us, and we kind of forget that it's really not about us. It's about the experience of someone else. And I don't know if this is, part of the journey that we all need to go through. I really don't know. But I know every single hypnotherapist I've spoken to has gone through a similar journey, of self-doubt, self-questioning, making it about us. And I'd like to think, as a reframe, I'd like to think that when we kind of make it about us, it's because we care a lot and we really want that change to happen. And then I think with time and with experience and with a little bit of, letting go, you start to recognize that it is about them. And when their intention is clear, then it does become about them.
Absolutely.
And one of the things now that I do, because I probably follow a model that maybe a lot of our mentors would say we shouldn't follow, but yeah, I do offer a 30 to 45 minute discovery call or complimentary consultation before I work with anyone. And that's because I work in packages. I don't work in single sessions. I just don't do that. That's not my business model. And it's not also my philosophy either. And one of the things that I use that call for is actually to determine how much self-responsibility a client is operating in, and how much they're at cause and how much they're at effect.
Yeah.
Because we know that if they're at effect, then it won't work. And then we're constantly going to be thinking, well, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And I know, looking back, you asked me a moment ago, what would I tell that younger hypnotherapist? And I think what I would tell her is to, create a system or have some kind of flow where you're pre-qualifying clients to make sure that they're ready for the change and they're ready to do the work. Because, we're not doing the work, and right now, and it's the reverse is also true. Right now, when clients get the results that they do and they're profusely thanking me, I make sure that they understand that I have nothing to do with this. It's their subconscious mind who did this for them. It's their intention for change that has actually delivered the change for them. I mean, I just happen to be the guide. That's all I am, and it's not about me. And when they actually recognize that it's their mind who did this for them, then no one can ever take the change away from them.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Faye, it's been incredible talking to you.
It's always great to talk to you, Lawrence.
If anyone listening to this wishes to reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you?
Very simple. It's just my name, faylawand.com, and all my social media handles are also Faye Lawand. And I see that my name is also printed here on the screen as well. Yeah.
They always say if you had a magic Lawand.
There you go. It's very appropriate to have a family name like mine, being a hypnotherapist.
Yes, exactly. The magic Lawand. I think that's what we should nickname you from now on. So thank you once again, Faye. And
such a pleasure, Lawrence. Thanks for having me on. It's always great to chat.
And for everyone listening or watching, we hope to see you next time. But in the meantime, stay safe and take care.